Hello everyone. I started my Wednesday by picking up another U-Haul auto transport trailer. My objective was to look at another '66 Mustang and possibly bring it home with me. If you haven't seen my previous road trip vlog about looking at and not buying that '66 Mustang, be sure to check it out. This is what I'm after. So I find myself road tripping on the New York State Thruway again, just like last time. If all goes well, my first stop will be Whitney Point. Whitney Point is a good place for a stop. It's strategically located, there's plenty to eat, and lots of gas stations. It's about 150 miles into my trip, and it'll take most of my full front tank to get there. I'll fill up in Whitney Point to prepare for what's ahead. It's a beautiful morning once again, but the afternoon return trip looks a little dicey. I enjoyed jamming to some music for a while. I took 690 before Syracuse to cut over to Route 81 South. Whitney Point was the first rest stop of the trip. I refilled my front tank and checked the oil and coolant levels for the first time. Everything was good. I headed out from there toward Binghamton. I was on schedule and things were going well. This is the last major city before reaching Liberty, 76 miles away. I'd get onto Route 17 East in Binghamton and stay on 17 all the way to Liberty. Route 17 cuts across the mountains, hills, and valleys of the western Catskill Mountain region. A lot of the roadway is in poor condition, which only adds to the fun of driving up and down, curving left and curving right the entire time. But it's a spectacularly beautiful drive, as you'll see during this next jam session. This topographic image of the Liberty area can't do it justice. The GPS sent me over the craziest route, where I was going up steep mountain back roads and then down the steepest roads I've ever been on. My inexperience driving on this terrain didn't prepare me for the steepest downhill run I've ever been on. That ended at a stop sign. I felt my brakes starting to act funny. The pedal getting soft and softer as things progressed. I was still able to control the speed until I hit that hill. My brake pedal turned to sponge that went to the floor, and I finally realized what was happening. My brakes overheated and boiled the fluid in the lines, filling them with air. I downshifted to second, and luckily the 4-speed automatic responded. I continued braking and downshifting to first gear. I was going slow enough that it went into first, winding the engine up as I crawled to a stop. About 15 feet past the stop sign, in the middle of the crossroad, which didn't have a stop sign. The locals know the score. The driver of the car coming up on me stopped and we communicated. He knew what happened and waited until I signaled. Then he drove around me. At that point I saw wisps of smoke coming from my front brakes, and I noticed the unmistakable smell of burned brakes. I crawled the rest of the way to my destination, which was fortunately very close by. This, I thought to myself, is a disadvantage to surge brakes. If I'd had electric brakes, I would have had better control of the braking system. And let this be a lesson to us all. If you're ever driving on hilly terrain and notice your brake pedals start to get soft, it's time to stop and let the brakes cool before disaster strikes. I didn't video the activities at the Mustang seller's location. I looked the car over fairly quickly, as there wasn't much to question. It's an amazingly clean car for having been in New York State for most of its existence. The Mustang has been in storage much of the time. It wasn't driven in winter as much as an average car would have been. It's not 100% rust-free. There are a few spots underneath that deserve some attention. But overall, it's very impressive. The seller and I quickly came to terms, and I became the owner of this beautiful 1966 Ford Mustang Coupe. I bought it with its 289 V8 not currently running, and it's still factory equipped with an original 3-speed manual transmission. The U-Haul auto transporter trailers don't include a winch for loading non-running vehicles. But the seller's neighbor came over and the three of us were easily able to push the Mustang up the ramps. With that, I was on my way home with the Mustang of my dreams. This is a sampling of footage to show you what it's like pulling a 5,000-pound combined load with a 5-liter F-150. I was too busy contending with the mountainous roads around Liberty to think about recording video at the time. The roads there were a significant challenge for the truck to both pull and stop this load. It was more than a handful. I was glad my brakes were working again after they had time to cool off, and I was focused on doing whatever it takes to keep them from overheating again on the treacherous hills there. I managed to get back to Route 17 without experiencing any more brake fade. Just a little bit more of this, then I'll be back on Route 17 West. Just take a look at the surrounding hills here. It's easy to see why the side roads here are so treacherous. Now my focus had to shift to maintaining a reasonable speed. Fortunately, the speed limit on long sections of this highway is 55 miles per hour. It was hard enough maintaining 55 on the uphill slopes, but sometimes on the downhill sides it was work to keep it under 60 miles per hour. Any more than 60 was so sketchy it was scary, especially with the strong crosswinds I was encountering. Now we'll just cruise for a while. There were a lot of New York State troopers along the highways on this entire trip. You might have noticed, one really nice thing about driving Route 17 westbound at this time of day is there was very light traffic. My exit toward 81 North came 76 miles from Liberty. I'd be in Whitney Point again in 22 miles or so. Coming up on Route 81 North. '81 North towards Syracuse. My Whitney Point fuel and rest stop is coming up soon. Aside from the traffic, this is the easiest section of 81. It's pretty flat and the speed limit is 55. Back at the highway oasis, Whitney Point. I filled both tanks and took care of my own needs. I'd burned 2 1/3 tanks of gas so far and drank 2 bottles of iced tea. I've driven 353 miles so far. The truck was doing great. After all that hard work, the oil was still right at the full line, and it didn't look like I'd lost any coolant either. I've never been more impressed with this 30-year-old 5-liter. I discovered the tie-down straps on the trailer needed to be retightened. Other than that, the trailer was doing fine as well. It's time for a different perspective. Whitney Point has lots of gas stations and eateries, and its location is good for tired travelers to take a break and get some fuel. Gas at Burned Area was $3.20 a gallon, better than many at home. I've learned on these recent trips that the rear tank is good for 150 miles, pulling an unloaded car trailer. That should be plenty to get me home with a full front tank, but I didn't think about the reduction in gas mileage with the heavier load. I've gotten 13.5 miles per gallon with an empty trailer, but on this trip, the overall fuel consumption was 11.9 miles per gallon. That's not bad considering the load. The clouds up ahead were looking ominous. The weather forecast was for rain before the Preble Rest Area, some miles up 81. I was hoping I'd get a break. I'd stopped at the Speedway gas station on the right here on the trip down. It was the first one off the exit at the time. Getting back on Route 81. This is steeper than it looks. Re-entering 81 north toward Syracuse, and lots of rain. You can see I was using the flashers a lot. This speed limit on 81 is 65. I couldn't get up to speed very quickly on this grade, and there were many long, steep grades ahead. Next stop, Preble Rest Area. weather app was accurate about the rain, when it would start and where I would be. This is probably the first time this Mustang has been washed in years, though it still needs soap and water. The Preble rest area is just ahead. I have memories of traveling with my very young son, years ago, and stopping here. It was too much at the time. The poor kid didn't want to get back in the truck. Thanks to Google Satellite View, I knew exactly where I was parking. My spots were open.
GoPro, stop recording.
I pressed on to the thruway from here, and more rain and eventual darkness. From the time I left the house this morning, 12 hours had passed when I finally returned home.
Okay, it's time to unload this car from the trailer. The first task is to remove the safety chain that's wrapped around the rear axle of the car. These chains don't bind the load, they're just a safety chain. And it stows right there. And there's another safety under the front end.
The car trailer was on a sloped driveway, so the car wanted to roll backward. There was slack in the tie-down straps that allowed the car to move and tighten the safety chain.
Oh boy. I'll have to see if these ratchet straps will pull the car forward enough to release this.
I could be wrong, but it seemed like the tires had lost a little air, and that reduced the tension on the straps.
There's one on each side. Yeah, that probably moved forward an inch. I didn't realize they had gotten that loose. was the last part of the trip, because they were tight every time I checked them, or if they weren't, I cinched them up. Almost. Ooh, it's close. Got a little too snug on here.
Now I realize I could have let some air out of the front tires and that would have loosened the chain.
Almost. There it is. Chock the wheel. I don't know if this emergency brake is any good on this, the parking brake. Okay, it's time to try to release these straps. Well, the good news is it's not rolling away. Now let's see if that wheel chock is actually doing anything. Not. So the parking brake is actually holding on this. Okay, let's see what happens. I set it up this way so the car will roll off, and if the brakes aren't any good or don't hold, I can just go onto the grass down there. Well, it started to roll back a little bit, but when the front wheels hit that crossbar on the trailer, they have that crossbar right behind the front wheel, right here. That was enough to stop it.
I got some help.
Okay, so I'll show you the problem. It started to roll back. I got in and released the brake. It started to roll back, but these bars on the front stopped it.
Okay.
So I just need a push to get it going.
This is where I learned the brakes actually do work.
Brakes are working.
That's good. Is that all you needed?
Yep, thank you.
Welcome.
Straps just lay in there. And that's all there is to it. Now I have to get this thing back to the U-Haul place before I pass my deadline.
This car is not currently running. Stay tuned for my next episode where I do the first Will It Run on this channel. The engine and engine compartment are dirty, as you'd expect after years of backyard garage storage. But we're going to find out if this engine is as sad as it looks. Is it locked up or will it turn over? Will it fire and maybe run and idle? We'll find out if the Mustang is drivable on the next Man About Home. Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like and subscribe.